Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
Ben Jones, Swansea live rent-free in your heads, boys, just admit it. To be honest, Swansea living rent-free in my head. No, I couldn't give a Swansea. I couldn't give a their firm. I thought I'd give them a little bit of props in the podcast, but some of their boys, some of the on there, we never went on their end of Panathinaikos. They chased a load of kids into the sea. What? You've never done anything against us, so jog on.
Today we are looking at the very naughty South Wales derby, the hatred, the rivalry, the battles, Cardiff City versus Swansea City, the Soul Crew versus Swansea Jacks. The first meeting between the two sides took place in the year 1912, in Swansea's first competitive fixture, and ended in a draw. In the pre-war era, the derby was played infrequently, particularly in the league with only 8 meetings between the sides from 1912 to 1945, as the clubs were rarely in the same division. After the Second World War, football attendances rose significantly, and the first derby attracted a record crowd of more than 57,000 in 1949. These high attendances continued through the 1950s, including the first derby played in a Welsh Cup final in 1956, which set a record attendance for a match in the competition. Attendances began to fall at the start of the 1960s, following a downturn in the fortunes of both teams. The 1970s saw only 5 derby matches, all in the Welsh Cup, before Swansea enjoyed a resurgence under the management of John Toshack in the early 1980s. However, by the end of the decade and the early 1990s, the derby became blighted by hooliganism, which led to the fixture becoming the first in Britain to ban away fans from attending. The derby experienced a resurgence at the start of the 21st century, with both teams reaching the championship before eventually meeting in the top tier of English football in the Premier League for the first time in 2013, which Cardiff went on to win. The clubs have played each other more than 110 times in all competitions. Having begun as a friendly rivalry, the relationship between the two sides deteriorated after the 1960s, which led to several high-profile, violent clashes between supporters that gained the fixture a reputation as one of Britain's fiercest rivalries. With the escalation of football hooliganism in the United Kingdom in the 1980s, the derbies became plagued by violence, led largely by hooligan firms from both sides, Cardiff's Soul Crew and Swansea's Jacks. Let's start with the famous swim away incident. Now, I'm not Cardiff or Swansea, and I wasn't there, so I don't know the truth. Both sides have different accounts. So, if you was there or you know the truth, then please let us know in the comment section and we can all debate it. In September 1988, after seeing their side win in Swansea, a group of around 10 Cardiff fans were chased into the sea near Swansea Civic Centre by a group of around 100 Swansea fans. Since then, Swansea fans have adopted a swim away gesture in reference to the event. Even Swansea footballers have joined in with the gesture. On a couple of occasions, Michael Obafemi has risked angering Cardiff City once again after performing the swim away celebration when he opened the scoring for Swansea City in the South Wales derby. And Jamie Patterson also appeared to perform the controversial swimming celebration after scoring for Swansea City in Sunday's South Wales derby against Cardiff City. John Joe Shelvey was reminded of his responsibilities by the FA after making swimming gestures during a clash between the sides in the year 2013. And then it was Russell Martin's turn. While he celebrated the Cardiff triumph, Martin performed the swim away gesture in front of Swansea's fans, which Patterson had also done after he scored the opening goal. "I got carried away," Martin said. "I did something at the end, I don't even know what it was, but I got told to do it and I enjoyed it." This is what one Cardiff lad who was actually there had to say about the incident. These are his own words. "I was actually down by the front that night with about 100 Port Talbot and Neath Blues, who stood against about 400 Jacks. Police eventually came, dispersed us all, and we all went back to our cars. 10 of the lads with us, ranging from 15 years old to 19 years old, were on their way to their cars when hundreds of Jacks chased them down to the sea. Where the 10 were run into the sea, no Jacks went in. Eventually, police came and dispersed the Jacks. That night when the lads returned to the Station Hotel pub in Port Talbot, we all laughed about it, thought it was quite funny. But to the Jacks, they thought it was something big they had finally done to Cardiff." One Swansea lad had this to say: "Of course, Cardiff fans say their incident never occurred and it is an urban myth, but they would, wouldn't they?" And another Swansea Jack had this to say on a Swansea fan forum online: "We have had lots of results against Cardiff, but this one was extra special. I was actually there. And we chased some of their main lads all around. They couldn't run quick enough. They ended up running into the sea to escape. Their might famous firm running into the sea. It's embarrassing. What a result we had. And it kills them that this happened. They deny it, of course, but they just cannot get over it." Then there was that clash in 1993. This is what a former football intelligence officer that was present at the game had to say. The ex-cop says the Cardiff City of today is unrecognisable from the one he supported as a boy on the terraces. Simon Chivers shudders at the thought of Wednesday, December 22nd, 1993. Then the young Cardiff City fan was witness to one of the most notorious nights in Derby Day history, as warring sets of Cardiff City and Swansea City fans clashed inside and outside Ninian Park. The game was marred by Swans fans ripping out seats, Cardiff fans invading the pitch and running battles between both sets of supporters. "I remember it vividly," says Chivers, who is now a football intelligence officer with South Wales Police. "That's the worst violence I have ever seen anywhere in my entire life." More than 20 years later, and the situation couldn't be more different. There's not been any notable issues between the two sides for 16 years, and the officer from Church Village intends it to stay that way. The self-confessed Bluebirds obsessive has been with the force for 15 years. Chivers, who was taken by his dad to his first match against Rotherham United in the year 1986, had been a regular fixture on the terraces at Ninian Park throughout the 90s and witnessed the violence that dogged the clubs for many years, to the point where Cardiff City was almost stigmatised by its own unwelcome reputation. When he started out as a part-time police spotter in the year 2002, providing intelligence on fans to the South Wales Police Football Intelligence Unit, he was more than versed in the ebb and flow of matches, and so it was no surprise when he joined the unit full-time in 2006. "I can accept that there were times, certainly through the 90s, when fans did misbehave, but the flip side of that was that there were many forces around the country that had a meet and beat attitude rather than a meet and greet attitude. They treated Cardiff fans poorly and behaved poorly, which causes a degenerating level of behaviour at away games. The Soul Crew, Cardiff's notorious hooligan group, would be involved in situations and act as a catalyst to start other Cardiff fans off. then you would have a lot of people misbehaving in one place. This was the South Wales derby that captured national headlines for all the wrong reasons. Gary Thompson's 52nd minute winner, a cool finish from Nicky Richards' incisive through pass, was the difference between the sides. But the festive fixture was marred by crowd trouble when violence erupted after the arrival of 1,000 Swansea fans and the kick-off was delayed. Hooligans ran onto the pitch and seats were ripped out and hurled at rival fans after Cardiff took the lead in a night that brought shame on Welsh football. A dart was thrown at a policeman's head during a Welsh Cup final in the early 1980s, and in the year 1993, what became known as the Battle of Ninian Park saw pitch invasions, seats thrown, and multiple arrests. Such scenes became familiar, and the game was the first in Britain to see away fans banned as police sought to prevent both cities becoming virtual war zones by keeping rival firms of marauding young men apart. For an element of surprise, Swansea's hooligans even travelled in several stretch limousines to one game in Cardiff, before eventually being rumbled by police. Such was the likelihood of trouble. Both teams were frequently told to run immediately back to the sanctuary of the dressing rooms at the final whistle. Despite not clashing since 1999, the hooligan book Swansea Jack's legend is that a dog called Jack saved several sailors from drowning in Swansea is full of cloak and dagger stories of the two sets of hooligans fighting throughout the decades, even when they've both been away watching the Wales national side. Italian police were baffled as they escorted hooligans from both clubs into the cells before a 2003 European Championship qualifying game. Even the Derby-starved players have been caught up the simmering rivalry. After their 2006 success in the Football League trophy at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium, Swansea players Lee Trundle and Alan Tate carried a Wales flag daubed with F off Cardiff. Fans hero Trundle also wore a t-shirt depicting a Swansea supporter urinating on a Cardiff shirt. In your Swansea slums, sing the restricted away following of 1,457 fans who are surrounded by a buffer zone of 2,500 empty seats, which the limit crowd to 17,411. You look in the dustbins for something to eat. You find a dead rat and you think it's a treat. Swans fans repeat the song, replacing the word Swansea with Cardiff. And let's not forget about the famous off at Newbury Racecourse. Intercity rivalry between Cardiff and Swansea ended in a mass brawl at a racecourse 150 miles away. A jury has heard. Football fans from Cardiff and Swansea exchanged blows in a violent and aggressive punch-up, which was caught on camera by Channel 4 Racing. By coincidence, a stag party from South Wales were also at the racecourse in Newbury, Berkshire, and became embroiled in the violence. Details of the mass brawl, which involved up to 60 men during a race meeting in Newbury, were revealed to the jury where 4 fans were on trial. The court was told that, according to one witness, the incident was a prearranged fight between fierce South Wales rivals, Swansea and Cardiff, which had previously been rained off. Joshua Davies, 24, David Jenkins, 32, Robert Jenkins, 32, and Ryan Thomas, 29, were captured on a Channel 4's TV camera alongside hooligans during clashes on a tarmac area in front of a grandstand. Pockets of fights broke out in a 15-minute period at the race meeting at Newbury Racecourse, at which crowds of 10,000 people were present on July the 14th last year. The quartet of defendants were described by prosecutors as aggressive, violent, and out of control. It may also have been pre-arranged according to one witness, although this was not part of the Crown's case. Half a dozen people were injured, 2 people were knocked unconscious, and another suffered facial injuries requiring 18 stitches. Prosecutor Damien van Duivenbode told a hearing at Reading Crown Court. On July 14th, 2012, Newbury Racecourse hosted a large and well-attended race meeting. It was thought about 10,000 or so punters came through the gates that day to watch the racing. The afternoon of the meeting was overshadowed by the eruption of violence on the concourse by the main stand. Witnesses thought up to 50 or 60 men were involved, throwing objects at each other and fighting. A quantity of alcohol may have been consumed, but it was clear to them on that day that all the men involved were Welsh. There was no particular clear pattern of fighting, with pockets of fighting happening alongside multiple brawls, involving multi-participants. There was a grouping of males in 2 groups. What seemed to lie behind this outburst was violence, was something amounting to intercity rivalry, with a large group of males from Swansea or Cardiff. It was like something out of the 70s or 80s, when the game was gripped by large-scale public disorder. It was out of such disorder back in those days that the 1986 Public Order Act was born. The prosecutor said the offence of affray, for which the 4 defendants were charged, is a situation where violence takes place in public and causes people to fear for their safety. What actually caused this disorder we will probably never know, and to some extent doesn't really matter, said Mr. van Duivenbode. Addressing the jury, he said, "Your concerns are with the involvement of 4 men in the dock, and whether ultimately I suspect if they were acting in self-defence." The racing that day was televised, and the violence which happened that day around 3:50 or 4 p.m. was between 2 races. The television company had, in fact, turned one of their cameras around and started to film some of this disorder. The defendants were on a stag do for pal Darren Wilcox, who was dressed as a jockey in orange, and were affiliated to Gorsainon Rugby Club near Swansea. Mr. Wilcox's father, Wayne, was assaulted in the scuffle, as well as one of the defendants, Robert Jenkins, who was left in a state of semi-consciousness after being attacked. Wales fullback Lee Halfpenny, who was part of the stag do, was not present when the violence kicked off. Off-duty Detective Constable Gareth Starr, who was part of the stag party, told the hearing, "We were just to the left of the stand. I was with Chris Harris, also police officer, attending the stag party. We were getting refreshments and were away from the main stag party for moments. This incident lasted for about 15 minutes. We had been sat down on the grass bank where 2 sets of white males, around 20 to 40 years, were. It started as a run-of-the-mill fight, and I thought it would come to a natural conclusion. There were people punching each other. Security was coming in, trying to break it up. Then you were getting pockets of fighting on the outskirts. One male who was wearing a suit has quite a nasty wound to his facial area. Over a period of 15 minutes, the fighting moved over 50 yards to where the grandstand is, and then back towards the corner before moving back where it had started. It was one of the most violent things I have seen." The police officer of 9 years' service added, "I heard the words Soul Crew being chanted, which is a hooligan term used by Cardiff City." Another key clash happened on the 7th November 2009 at the Liberty Stadium. Swansea claimed a 3-2 victory in a match that again saw crowd disturbances as hundreds of Swansea fans waited outside the ground for the Cardiff fans to depart. This resulted in a total of 15 arrests being made during and after the match. Hundreds of Swansea City football fans clashed with police following Tuesday night's Carling Cup match with Cardiff City at the Liberty Stadium in Swansea. Stones and other missiles were hurled at police lines as Cardiff fans waited to leave the stadium in buses. Riot police were deployed outside the stadium. 8 fans were arrested, and police are calling for a ban on anyone identified in their investigation. Lord Kinnock, a Cardiff supporter, said he was outraged by the clashes. Speaking on BBC Radio Wales, the former Labour leader said, "I thought our people had learnt their lesson, and it is disgusting, it's appalling, and it reflects shame on the clubs. I just thought we had got through that as far as the Swans and the Bluebirds were concerned, and they have just got to learn that it is not acceptable." The game, which Swansea won 1-0, passed off without trouble. But as the crowds left the stadium, there were reports that some Cardiff fans who were confined in a fenced-off enclosure hurled missiles at the police. Then the trouble spread across the road, where the police were holding back hundreds of Swansea fans to keep the road clear for the Cardiff coaches to come out. Hundreds of police officers in riot gear kept the home fans clear of the road, but missiles including bricks and glass bottles were thrown at Cardiff buses. Riot police confronted both sets of fans, but the worst violence broke out across the road among Swansea fans, where the strong police cordon was backed up by dogs and police horses. Hundreds of chanting Swans fans hurled lumps of concrete, bottles and cans at police. 5 arrests were at the stadium, and 3 were in the city centre. Police have promised a full investigation into what happened involving both clubs. They are calling for a ban on any fans involved in the violence. South Wales Police Assistant Chief Constable Robert Evans said, "Whilst the vast majority of spectators were well behaved, a minority made up of several hundred caused officers and stewards concern throughout the event. After the game ended, officers were forced to position themselves in such a way to prevent protagonists clashing. During this, officers were subjected to missile throwing and sustained threats of violence. It is of credit to the vast majority of mature fans that they supported police and the clubs and confined their rivalries to the pitch. However, the behaviour of others was totally unacceptable. It was thanks to the professionalism of the police officers and the stewards that the violence was contained to a small area and did not spoil the enjoyment of the majority of people." However, ACC Evans said compared to fixtures in previous years, the trouble was limited and confined to a small area. Swansea City Supporters Trust Chairman Phil Sumbler, who did not see the trouble outside the ground, said 8 arrests from a crowd of more than 17,000 suggested the problems were not on a large scale. If you were to check that against the figures for some big Premier League games, it's no higher or lower, he said. Talking about inside the ground, there were no real incidents of note during the course of the game, and the atmosphere was a credit to both sides. The fact that there have only been 8 arrests might suggest it couldn't have been on a big scale. The game had been the first major match between the teams in 9 years. A man has been arrested after the referee at the Cardiff City and Swansea City football derby was hit by a missile thrown from crowds at the game. Mike Dean received a cut after he was hit on the head by what appeared to be a coin during the first half of the match at Cardiff's home ground. His wound was treated, and he carried on with the game with a plaster over his cut. The match finished 2-2. A further 5 arrests were made outside Ninian Park for disorder. The then Cardiff City chairman Peter Ridsdale said the man who threw the missile will be banned for life from any Cardiff City game. He said the man was arrested after CCTV images were examined following the incident. Mr. Ridsdale said the incident made him feel sick and that he had apologised personally To Mr. Dean, who is from the Wirral, Merseyside, it's a disgrace, it's unacceptable. Makes you sick because obviously we spend a lot of time at Cardiff City trying to do the right things. Today was always going to be a high-profile game. You don't expect idiots to do that, and people like that have no place in football, and certainly no place at Cardiff City Football Club.
Late 80s through to most of the 90s, it was a good 30 of our crew, our little firm, always at the forefront. And yeah, it was good.
Talk a bit about the, I think it was the 80s. Was it with the Swansea FA Cup? Was that the 80s?
Early 90s.
It was early 90s, was
yeah,
it?
Yeah.
What was? Did you go to that game?
Yeah,
of course.
yeah. I got nicked as well. Basically, you have this lot of banter with Cardiff Swansea. Now, how can I explain this? Swansea got a firm of between 100 and 300 boys, yeah? Now, their firm is together, yeah? Cardiff's firm was all over South Wales. Do you see what I mean? So you might have 50 from the valleys or 100 from the valleys going. You might have 50, 60 from Port going. You'd have different areas of Cardiff making their own way to the ground. Now, the Jacks could pick off different firms at Cardiff and may have a result against them. But the only time I've seen Cardiff Swansea meet firm to firm is at our FA Cup on by Martha's. They had a nightclub on their main street called Martha's, and they had this little roundabout. We've come down our main street, and we was, 900 strong. They had about 200-300, and they got leathered, blitzed. And that's the only time the two firms I've actually seen meet, you know. Obviously, we have more numbers with them, but that's not our fault. You know, you're not going to say, hang on, 500 stay there in a minute and we'll fight even numbers. It don't work like that.
No.
But the only time we've had even, like, you know, their firm onto our firm, full hitters, was that FA Cup game.
Well, the Cardiff boys anyway.
Yeah. And, they got blitzed. They got leathered.
So the swim away, you know.
They're happy with that, aren't they? They chased, I think, they won one boy from Cardiff there. They won one person from Cardiff. There was a few Port Talbot boys.
It's right by Swansea.
Right by Swansea. And a couple of Penarth boys, and I think one from Barry. But there was no actually Cardiff, none of our lot, 1,000,000%. There was no Cardiff boys there. And it was after the game, they were still hanging around. You know, they're happy with us, swim away, you know. But what I don't, you know, I've gone to Swansea. I've lost time. I lost count how many times I've gone to Swansea. Walk round and, you know, nothing have happened. Like I said, they may land on a mob from Caerphilly or may land on a mob from the valleys. You know, have a result against them. But from my point of view, from our lot, from our little crew, they've never done anything against us. We've even turned up. We even turned up one.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.